So we have only 3 Grade 1 bands going to the Worlds from North America. I was concerned enough about there only being 5 Grade 1 bands in North America, but this could bring the number down. What do I mean? I'll tell you soon. From Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, we are live. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Live at PBL-TV. I'm Rene Gauthier, your passionate, pessimistic purveyor of information in the pipe band life. So we had our first Grade 1 band recital. I would call it a competition if it was truly one. But yes, City of Dunedin Pipe Band played and obviously won first place in their hometown of Dunedin, Florida. But as far as results in the other grades, I don't have them yet. But when I do, you will see it here this week, along with the overall rankings in the Eastern US. But let's get to the latest news. In Keysborough, Victoria, Australia, it was the Grade 3 City of Melbourne that were the top band of the day in the Victorian Pipe Band Championships. In the Grade 4A division, it was Haileybury that took first place. Scott School Albury took first place in the 4B division. And Haileybury were the top novice band. We will go into detail on this and Dunedin in the next results show this week. At the ACPBA AGM in March, a proposal for a monetary allowance to association directors was nixed. This is after the same proposal was made and turned down in 2020. This was apart from the trustees who received no enumeration. As well, a proposal coming from the North Ireland branch to add a second ensemble judge to the contest was also turned down. In the PPBSO, there have been changes to the band contest requirements in which Grade 3 bands will be alternating between a medley and an MSR at each contest, except for Maxville, which the Grade 1 and Grade 2 bands will be playing both a medley and an MSR for the North American Championship. Grade 4 bands will alternate between a march medley and a medley throughout the season. And for more information, you can visit the Society's website, pipebandsontariO.org. And now let's get to our guest. He has been a drummer for the past 24 years, beginning as a cadet and playing in military bands in Nova Scotia and British Columbia. He was a military interpreter at the Halifax Citadel, where he was a drummer and a drum major with the band. He played with Dartmouth and District, and he is now playing with the 78th Highlanders Halifax Citadel as a snare drummer. He is ACPBA President Dan Nee. Welcome to the show, Dan.
Thanks for having me, Renee. I appreciate it.
So let's go to the beginning. You started in 1999
Yes,
at the age of 13.
Yes, 13. Yeah.
Was this as a cadet?
Yeah. So I joined the Sea Cadets in 1998, and in the fall of 1999. A friend of mine who was a bagpiper was attending a weekly practice or instruction in Shannon Park here in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. And I was a part of the band at the Sea Cadet Corps and was interested in learning more about drumming. So started taking lessons every Thursday night in Shannon Park under Sean Morton. He was my first drumming instructor. And was for about 3 or 4 years up until changed a couple hands, senior staff cadets and whatnot. But Sean Morton was my initial drumming instructor at the age of 13 while I was a cadet.
Interesting. And then at what point did you decide, were you, did you want to, or were you asked to do drum majoring?
So the way that I got into that is I had started being a drum major for my cadet unit band very early on in my career, and in 1999 I was selected to go to the Royal Nova Scotia International Tattoo with the Tri-Service Cadet Band from the Atlantic region. I was under the impression I was going as a snare drummer, and at our first rehearsal, I was informed that I was going to be the drum major for the cadet band as well. So, kind
Put your
of,
sticks down. Here's the mace.
yeah, pretty much. My officer at the time, Jermaine Downey, who's a piper now in Ontario, knew that I had some experience as a drum major, but not in a pipe band setting. So I was kind of here's the mace, kind of learn as you go. But I had some really good instruction. The drum major of the tattoo of the time was Norman McKenzie.
Okay.
I believe he was from Ontario as well, and he was the head drum major for the tattoo. So I got a very, very good first taste, and I learned quite a bit. And so from there, it just kind of stuck. I really enjoyed doing it and learning more about the pipe band drum majoring,
Right.
along with the drumming side of things as well. So, yeah, it was kind of a very hard and fast lesson at first.
I guess so. I mean, so uh, so you had some experience drum majoring before they gave you the mace, or
Yeah, so I was a drum major for my Sea Cadet band, so it was like a
right?
brass and reed style band.
Oh
So
yes, yes.
yeah, so I
I
had
know those bands.
so I had a little bit of experience doing that style, but not in the pipe band. I
Right.
just started learning drill and as a pipe band member and stuff. So I kind of had a basic understanding, but not from a leadership kind of standpoint. So that was it was a baptism by fire for me for sure
Right.
that first year.
Because yeah, because you're dealing with there were two different ways to do mace drill, and especially between the naval and the Highland bands.
Yes,
I understood that because I mean a marked time we had to bring out the mace, as bring the mace across rather than holding it up. I
right, right.
mean stuff like that. I mean, and then just a wheel. You just stick the mace out rather than bring it in and steer them.
Yes, yeah. Um, it was definitely a big learning curve for sure. And I did word of command was a lot bigger with a pipe band more so than a brass and reed.
Yes,
A lot of
definitely.
drumming signals with the brass and reed style. So there was a little bit of a learning curve there, but I definitely
For sure.
caught on pretty quick, and I really enjoyed it. It was kind of a style of drum majoring, if you say that, that I really did enjoy for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't a drum major back then myself. Obviously, I mean, I had, I had, I had an interesting role, especially in Ontario when we did our ceremony. We did two ceremony of the flag shows in Toronto,
Hmm.
and I was a gunner. So I was either on the firing party, firing the 12-pounder naval field gun,
Hmm.
and in Ontario there's two of them that are in their best condition that anywhere.
Yeah.
I know there's a couple in Comox that have been mangled a bit. I'm pretty proud of our of the gun we had. I mean, at HMCS York and HMCS Star, HMCS York in Toronto, HMCS Star in Hamilton,
Right.
and they both had beautiful guns.
Yeah.
Beautiful guns. So yeah, I'm very much aware of how things worked in the naval band. So so you and I have, I mean, we talked about this earlier, how you and I
Yes.
have a lot in common, having been four sea cadets, and we found ourselves in a pipe band.
Yes. Yeah. 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 It was. I did a lot of my training musically on the orchestral side, I guess on the military band side, brass and reed, um,
Definitely.
before more so than the pipe band side of things. I didn't really start to take pipe band drumming very seriously until I was a young adult in my early mid to mid 20s. I had
Hmm.
taken quite a bit of time off of pipe band drumming because I was
Right.
teaching military band drumming to cadets. Um, and I made my way to BC,
That
to
was out.
Victoria,
Yes, that was out. BC. Yes.
and was working with an Army cadet unit that was affiliated with the Canadian Scottish. It's just kind of messing around with a practice pad one night, and the lead drummer was like, "Hey, do you have experience in pipe bands?" I was like, "Well, I did as a cadet when I was younger, but." So I
Hmm.
was very quickly recruited in. Started off playing bass drum, and then the lead drummer kind of found out that I did have some side drumming experience, and she pushed me to kind of go further with that. So that's kind of when I got back into pipe band drumming in the mid 2000s when I was with the Canadian Scottish in Victoria.
Yes, there's definitely a lot of differences between, especially bass drumming. There's a lot of differences in between a military band, a military style,
Yes, yeah.
and the style we play in competitive bands. I mean,
Hmm.
in a competitive band, you're playing with finesse.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
Where it, say, in a military band, like say the Canadian Grenadiers, or even the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders of Canada, even most Highland regiments are playing 120.
Oh yeah, you're on the march and you're driving that tempo, keeping the pace for sure.
Yes.
Um, yeah, I did play a lot of bass drum with the Canadian Scottish, and I guess when I made my way back to Nova Scotia in 2009, um, I sought out a band to play with on this side of the country and ended up with the 12 wing pipes and drums, the Air Force band here out of Shearwater, um, playing snare drum. But we decided we were going to field a competition band and mixed with the 14 wing band from Greenwood in the valley here. Made an Air Force contingent band to compete in our circuit here in the Atlantic
Yes.
provinces, and was asked to play bass drum from them. So I kind of that's when I really started to kind of dive into pipe band bass drumming and started paying more attention to old recordings that I had, SFU, Field Marshal, and listening to those bass drummers and how they played. And this is kind of around the time when I started paying more attention to pipe band competitions where they were streaming them or
Hmm.
recording them, I guess, back then, putting them on those DVDs. And I dove into watching them and listening to them, paying attention to their style and
Hmm.
how it differed. Uh, it was a challenge at first, but it kind of makes you more musical, I find, um, playing a bass drum and a pipe band in a competition setting for sure.
Hmm. Yes. Well, let's take a step back here for a second, because you weren't before you started playing with 12 wing. You actually were a military interpreter at the Citadel, correct?
Yes, yeah. So I joined the Halifax Citadel, the National Historic Site, as an employee, and as a drummer
Hmm.
for a year. And there, I did meet a lot of the pipers and drummers in the band were younger than me. That job was predominantly staffed by university students as a summer job. Um,
Hmm.
but a lot of the pipers in the band and drummers as well played in other competition bands, so I kind of got a little bit of a taste there too. It was a fantastic job, just to having to show up and play the drums. It was a very different style of drumming as well because we played, or they still do play, rope tension drums there now. So it was another style of drumming that I had to learn, which I still really enjoy, and it's a very open style of drumming, and the bass drumming there was more so military, keeping the tempo, keeping the beat. Um, it was an interesting job. I met a lot of interesting people, did a lot of cool trips, and it helped me as a drummer because I had to adapt to another style of drumming,
Right.
and being around these pipers and drummers that were playing at the grade one level kind of elevated my playing as well.
Mm.
So it was a huge help going into playing with 12 wing as well.
Yes, they. I 70th Highlanders must have been around the Citadel a lot, were they?
Yes and no. I mean, Bruce Gandy has an office at the fort, and he would be
Right.
giving lessons through the day and on weekends and whatnot. And the band, from time to time, would be practicing there. So, you got to know some of the members of the band that weren't working at the fort. So, and on this side of the country, the pipe band community is very small. And so once you start to meet everybody, you're meeting literally everybody. So when we go to Highland Games, you see the same faces year after year, and it's a very tight knit community here. So being around those guys at the fort was super helpful. It definitely made me play better.
Really. So, at what point did you think, I'd like to move on? I want to go to a band like Dartmouth and District.
Yeah, so playing with 12 wing was a great experience. We did compete a couple years, but I felt that I wasn't being challenged
Mm,
enough. Being a military band, there was a lot of parades and ceremonies and stuff, which was great because I was acting as a drum major with 12 wing as well. But I definitely wanted to take my drumming to a higher level. So I approached Jeremy Keddy, who at the time was in the process of taking over as lead drummer with the grade one band here at the Halifax Citadel. And he recommended Dartmouth because they were kind of in a rebuilding stage, but they had a very good instructor there with Zach Smith, another classically trained orchestral drummer, but a very talented pipe band drummer as well. So I went to Dartmouth, started taking lessons with Zach one-to-one, and was with Dartmouth from 2013, I believe, and just up until a few years ago before I joined the grade one band here. Great experience. A lot of the same people stayed with that group, which are there now still. And with Dartmouth, we kind of bounced around a little bit. When I first joined, it was a grade three band.
hmm
So there was a bit of a challenge. My music reading skills weren't the greatest, so I
Yeah.
definitely on the pipe band side at least. So it was a challenge getting up to snuff. There was some long nights, some choice words for Zach,
I can imagine.
but yeah, it was definitely being with Dartmouth really forced my drumming to another level. We went from grade three to grade two, grade four. It kind of bounced around a little bit depending on,
Yeah.
the circumstances. We stayed in grade three for a few years and then eventually made a trip to Glasgow for the World Championships. We did play at North Berwick and Perth,
Right.
and stepping off the bus in North Berwick, seeing some of the juvenile bands kind of really blew our mind because these kids were phenomenal
Oh yeah.
players.
Absolutely.
And we felt a little on the back foot, so to speak.
Yeah.
So it took us a little while to kind of get our confidence back, but at the actual Worlds themselves in 2015, we placed fourth as a band in the prize list in grade 3A, which was we ecstatic. We did not expect to place that high. We didn't, after our first qualifying play that day, we didn't know that we didn't feel we might have even made it into the finals. So we were just happy to make it to the finals, and then to place fourth was just, it was, we were over the moon for sure.
Yeah.
It was a pretty great feeling. So
It's that moment that if at first you do succeed, try not to look so astonished.
yeah, pretty much. I mean, the videos of the bands winning awards, I think we were louder than the grade one, or the first place band in our grade. We kicked up such a stink. It was a great day. It was fantastic for us, and definitely helped us to stay motivated in playing better. And over the years, the band did. I think the next year we did make the jump to grade 2, where we stayed for a couple years.
Right.
Wasn't very feasible for us at the end. There was some players moving around, and we lost some people, and it kind of made it difficult to stay in that grade. So the grade 2 band folded that summer, and a lot of the drummers and pipers just joined the grade 4 band, and kind of went from there. Now Dartmouth, many times we'd go to Maxville and third and second, and not hitting that top spot in whatever grade we were in. But in 2019, we placed first across the board, piping, drumming, ensemble. We hit them all, and that was another great milestone for us to win the North American Championships in 2019 in our grade. So it was another highlight. Almost felt better winning that than placing fourth in the Worlds, but it was great.
I guess so.
Great for us. And then the pandemic kind of took the wind out of our sails, and we were poised to go and compete at the Worlds again in 2020. But how that story goes, most every band kind of took a hit then, I think. But yeah, so we tried to stay as active as possible via Zoom and whatnot. And it just got to a point where it was hard to sustain that. And I stayed with Dartmouth for an extra 2 years before making the decision to challenge myself even further. And that's when I approached Tom Cumming, who's the current lead drummer of the 70th Highlanders, Halifax Citadel, and asked him if I could come out and play, and he graciously accepted me in. Last year was a long, hard-working year for me.
Yes.
I felt I had to play every day a couple hours just to kind of stay in the mix. And even in our first games, I didn't actually get to attend Georgetown just due to a work commitment. But the first games I played with the band last year was in Antigonish. Even till the last moment walking to the line, I'm like expecting not to play, but did play. I guess your own worst critic.
Of course.
In my case, I'm extremely hard on myself when it comes to drumming and the level that I play at. So it was a huge confidence booster for us, for me, to be able to play in the grade 1 circle there for the first time in Antigonish, and we having those warm-up games in Antigonish and Fredericton, and then off to Maxville. So it was last year was a very busy year for me, trying to stay at a level where I could be to compete with the band. This year again, same thing. We're some of the same music, some changes, but trying to work really hard to keep myself at a level where I can play in the band, and then being asked to play bass for 12 Wing because they want to put a competition band together, but they didn't have anybody to play bass with them this summer. So I'll be helping them out on bass drum for a couple games this summer as well. So I'm juggling my snare playing with the grade 1 band, and then having to attend practices with the 12 Wing again and playing bass. But they're both amazing groups of people, great musicians, and um, I'm pretty happy to be playing with both of those groups.
Indeed, indeed. So, about Antigonish, how how would you compare an experience at Antigonish compared with Maxville? Because obviously they're both completely different places, completely different locations.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I haven't been, at one point, we are, my band is looking at the possibility of going to Antigonish. And I'm very curious about what it's like because I've heard so many great things about going out there. How would you describe being in Antigonish?
Yeah, so Antigonish is I believe, if I'm not mistaken, one of the oldest Highland Games outside of Scotland.
Mhm.
Definitely, I think it's the oldest in North America, 160, 150 years old or so.
Yeah,
Um, it's a great games. Like I said, the pipe band community on this side of the country is kind of small, so it's a great time because nobody is there to there's no ill feelings or rivalries or anything like that. Everybody's encouraging everybody else. Most other bands, if they can, will watch the other bands play, and are there for the solo competitors as well. Definitely a much smaller games, say, than Maxville,
for sure.
spread over 2 days, but it's a great games. There's the camaraderie there with the people um, in the other bands, the other grades is fantastic. A great beer tent, lots of great entertainment. It's people
Yeah,
are you definitely look.
I would think that the atmosphere is completely different from, say, in Ontario because it is there is a very Celtic feel to the area to begin with.
Yeah, Antigonish is super close to Cape Breton, and
Yeah.
a lot of Scottish heritage coming out of Cape Breton, and there was a lot of Scots that settled in around Antigonish as well in New Glasgow, Pictou area.
Mhm.
So it does have a very strong connection in that regard. Um, it I don't want to say that it doesn't have pressure. There's definitely pressure because you want your bands to perform well. But it definitely has in my opinion, a little bit more of a laid back kind of feel to it.
Mhm.
Once you play, it's you've played and you talk about it with your band, but then
Right.
it's okay, let's have some fun too. Um, and there's it has all the dancing and heavy events and lots of great food options. It really is a fun of games, and my two favorite are Antigonish, and then in 2 weeks after that is the Fredericton game. Well, the New Brunswick Island games in Fredericton, New
Yes.
Brunswick. Personally, my favorite games on this side of the country. Um, because the location is fantastic. They hold the games on the grounds of Lieutenant Governor's residence in Fredericton,
Okay.
um, and Fredericton's a great town as well.
Oh, absolutely.
So I enjoy that games quite a bit. Antigonish and Fredericton are both really great for their own reasons.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Fredericton is a great because it's a great trip to get up there for me from
Yep.
Halifax. It's about a 4 or 5 hour drive, and it's just a continuation. Almost feels like okay, Antigonish kind of rolls right into Fredericton, and you just pick up where you left off. With your friends and fellow bandmates. So it's a fun scene on this side of the country. Um, Definitely a lot smaller than it used to be. There used to be quite a few games on this side of the country.
Mhm.
Now we have um, the major games. There's a Pembroke Challenge that happens at the College of Piping and PEI, um, which is kind of the starter for our season. Um, the summer season, at least, we do have mini gatherings that happen um, at the Halifax Citadel, which is hosted and put on by Bruce Gandy. A lot of piping. That's more so a piping competition. We just actually had our first knockout series. We've taken
Right.
that from Ontario. I say we, but it's not the ACPBA that's running it. That's the Tom Cumming, who's the lead drummer of the Halifax Citadel Pipe Band.
Right.
Started that, and we're hoping to kind of keep that going, just to give more of a competition atmosphere for
Sure.
pipers and drummers alike. So,
For sure.
um, yeah, so we're picking up stuff. We're hoping that more things happen. There used to be games here in Halifax. There was a games in Summerside as well, and there was a competition up in Cape Breton at the Gaelic College as well, which is no more. So the season used to be a lot bigger, but the games that we do have are a blast, a lot of fun, and we love seeing bands come from Ontario or even further. We had George Watson's College come to Antigonish back in the year, I'd say 2012, I think it was 2011 maybe. So it was good to see, bands that we don't normally see come to our games,
Of
and
course.
Antigonish seems to be the bigger one for out of town bands for sure.
Yes.
Just it is such a historic game. So it has lots of history and culture, and the town itself is a university town. St. FX, St. Francis Xavier University is there.
Right.
So a lot of the bands stay there. So it's kind of a tight knit. After you leave the field, you go back to the university, and you're carrying on with more libations, if you want to say that. So it's a great time. Antigonish is a good games for sure.
I think what people don't talk enough about is as much as you love the competitions, you love the mass bands, love all this, but I find, in my experience being on the Ontario tour, is that there are a lot of places to go to see. It's not just to play, but to look around. Look at Fredericton, for example. You're not far off from the Bay of Fundy. So
yeah,
that would make an awesome day trip.
Yeah, for sure. And like I said, the games in Fredericton is right on the grounds of the Lieutenant Governor's residence. It's a beautiful spot, and it's right on the St. John River. And Fredericton is quite a bit of a bigger city than Antigonish, but so there is a little bit more to see and do, say, in Fredericton. But Antigonish is also such a great little town as well. Lots of
Absolutely.
shops and whatnot there to see. Food is amazing. It's a great place to visit. Both games are great to visit if you can.
Absolutely. That's what makes that's actually what makes a lot of it worthwhile.
Mm-hmm.
Being at these places, being just having a look at the epiphany of what a beautiful country you live in.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
It's go to Maxville. We can go to Ottawa, and that's what we did when we had the weekend out.
For those people on the picket line,
sorry about that. Sorry.
Oops.
I had my phone just started doing something all on its own there. I apologize.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Nothing untoward, obviously.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to my point. We had when we go to these places, we have the opportunity to see beautiful things. Last year we went out Kingsville, Ontario. It's right by Peely Island, probably the most southern point in the whole country. And to see a beautiful island like that, and to know, hey, it's just one of those moments that makes you proud to be a Canadian.
Yeah, with Dartmouth, we the year after we competed at the Worlds, we got invited to the Estes Park Tattoo, which is in Colorado. Out of the blue is one of those things that, like, okay, where is this place? Colorado, what? So we went, and it was at the end of the summer, but it was amazing. It's a very small tattoo, but there was some fantastic acts. Like a Marine Corps band was there. It was just amazing. And then they have a Scottish festival as well, where they have a couple games. So it was good to see, be at a games elsewhere other than like Maxville or any National Fredericton, and to see how they go about things, and being in the foothills of the Rockies was an amazing experience. Waking up and having elk grazing on the front lawn of the residence, it was crazy.
Nothing like a change of scenery.
Yeah, and I mean, it was a great trip. It was a long haul. It was for us coming from Halifax to Colorado,
Obviously.
but it was a cool experience. Just being able to go somewhere else, and there's not a lot of things you can do or groups you can be in where you have those opportunities to go places and experience new cultures and new cities. So it's being in pipe bands has kind of opened doors for experiences for me to have that I never would have had a chance to do.
Very much.
Yeah.
Very much. I can't say it any better than you can.
Yeah.
I certainly can't. So now you're with the 78th Highlanders, Halifax Citadel.
Yes. Yeah.
And you've already been to Scotland with the Halifax Citadel, have you not?
No, when I worked with the site, the National Historic Site, I never got it. We never got a chance to go over the grade one, the Halifax Citadel band. It's a tough thing at times because you have to be there at the fort to run the day-to-day operational stuff. There is trips. Don't get me wrong. I've got to go on quite a few trips on the off season. I've been to Miami 4 times as a part of a cruise ship convention that happens here every year, and to Banff a few times. So right. I mean, like, I've got to do quite a few trips as a member. As a historic interpreter, with the Halifax Citadel, but never with the band did I have the chance to go there. So, being a part of the Grade 1 band here in Halifax, getting into that Grade 1 circle at the Worlds is definitely top of my list of things that I want to check off and get done. I can't imagine a more amazing. Terrifying experience to do. So definitely looking forward in the future to having a chance to compete in the Grade 1 circle there for sure.
Absolutely. It's most certainly on my bucket list, I'll tell you that. But unfortunately, I'll have to do it as a drum major rather than as a drummer.
To compete at the Worlds is in any capacity is a pretty cool experience. And just being at the Worlds, it was to see the bands, the people, like it was a crazy experience in 2015 for me. And just having the chance to be like up close behind your inventories and your field marshals and your shots. It was,
wow.
Yeah, to be there and see these bands in person. I have stacks of CDs from these bands, but to be there in person and hear them play was,
if there was one way to define shock and awe, it would be that.
Oh, completely. Yeah. And like in our first games in North Berwick, lining up a mass bands next to Inveraray District, like, okay, is this really happening right now? So, it was, being in Scotland was a highlight for sure of my pipe band career. It definitely opens up your mind to the possibilities, makes you want to play better and go higher for sure.
For sure. So 78th Highlanders, Halifax Citadel, not going to Scotland this year.
No, definitely, it's I believe in the plan to get there. There's a little bit of uh, life events happening.
Mhm.
Myself, my
Of
partner
course,
is just
of
about
course.
8 months pregnant, and there's other members of the band as well that are having children in around the June time frame. So uh, even getting to Ontario and for early part of the season is difficult. But we're definitely making strides to go. Um, I'm not in the leadership role of the band, so I can't speak for the band, but I know,
Lots happening in the off season, eh?
yeah, so I know that the general feeling is that people want to get back there, and I think ultimately the goal is to get back in the circle at the World Championships for sure.
What would you say is your greatest concern about not going to Scotland? I mean, I do you are you guys concerned at all that there might be some sort of, consequence from the RSPBA?
Well, I mean, I don't really want to speak too much on that. Like I said, I'm not in a leadership role. I can't speak for the pipe major, or the lead drummer or the executive for that matter. I think we're just concentrating on going forward and getting better, getting to Maxville to see how we stack up against
Sure.
two great bands in Dunedin and the Frasers.
Yeah, big
Um,
time.
I think our goal is to get there and put the best play out there to show that we are a competitive band in the grade one field. Um,
Damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead.
yeah, pretty much just to do what we can to get there, and
Indeed.
prepare ourselves to play in the grade one circle at the Worlds for sure.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So, let's talk about the ACPBA. So, what can we expect this summer in the on the circuit for Atlantic Canada?
Well, I mean, we're carrying on as per normal. We do have a couple. We do have a couple smaller games that we're hoping that we'll get some bands to. There's a Pugwash Gathering of the Clans that happens on Canada Day. So we normally have a couple bands that attend there. It's not a very big games. It's more a highlight for solo players, and there's some dancing that happens there. Um, we're a little bit different on the East Coast where the ACPBA doesn't run the games. The games themselves have their own organizing committees, and the ACPBA sanctions the games. So points for champion supreme stuff like that still go through the ACPBA
Of
and
course.
at the games. We're definitely trying to encourage more. We're trying to find more ways to get people involved in piping and drumming in general. Um, so trying to get the games themselves out in the public eye to attract more people is always a big push to try and get more exposure, get more people involved.
Right.
We're in the process of making it more accessible for our membership to become accredited judges. We did run some successful online workshops over the past couple of years,
Mhm.
which were attended by both our membership and membership abroad and throughout the country as well. So, um, whether or not that's going to happen again, we're trying to engage our membership a lot more, to try and build up the bands that we have around here, to put them on a stronger footing for sure.
For sure. For sure. So, obviously, as you mentioned, you lost some games out of this. When did you lose these?
Well, Halifax and Summerside haven't been an active games for many years, so it wasn't a pandemic that killed them.
Mhm.
I wasn't involved with the pipe band scene at the time,
Right.
so I can't really say why. I know there was a lot for Halifax. I think there was some funding issues and stuff like that, and location, and Halifax being the capital city of Nova Scotia. There's a lot of festivals and stuff that happen. So I think there was a lot of conflicting things, other festivals that kind of clashed. Can't speak on Summerside. I don't know why that kind of fell by the wayside, but I think there used to be a lot more competitive bands around.
Yeah.
And as the scene grew smaller, I think that just kind of naturally happened. But I know there is some talks and some rumblings of people wanting to bring back, say, Halifax games.
I would think so.
The ACPBA would definitely support that, and getting that off the ground. And, it would be nice, being a Haligonian myself, having a games in my home city would be fantastic. Go to sleep in my own bed at the end of the day would be fantastic. But yeah, just giving more of an opportunity to compete would be great. Yeah, that's one downfall about being on this side of the country, I guess, is that we have such a short season, having 2 or 3 games, and then if you're not off to Maxville or Scotland, your season's ultimately done after Fredericton. So
basically,
it definitely would be nice to have more to do as a band or as a player. So we're definitely trying. It's great that Tom Cumming has stepped up to run the knockout series, and it was pretty well attended the first round. So it's definitely something that we are hoping stays around for a while.
right?
Just to get, like I said, more exposure for players,
yes,
and to get into the competition scene.
Yes, you definitely want to get something new in.
Mm-hmm,
you want to you want to build. You want to. I mean, you want to take little steps, and then eventually, when you're ready to make the push or make the big sell, that's when you make your move. I mean,
definitely.
You want to do it cautiously for sure. You don't want to go too fast.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, we definitely want to support in any way we can, and it's hard for a small association sometimes, and especially an association like ours, which is so spread out. We cover a pretty wide area. Our members come from all the Atlantic provinces. We have one band in Newfoundland right now in St. John's, the Newfoundland Highlanders, formerly the City of St. John's Pipe Band. So we do have some membership in Newfoundland. It would be great to see more bands, but I think across the country, there's some associations that are bigger, have more membership. But I think we struggle here sometimes with retaining and bringing new people in. So we're always looking for ways to bring more people in and get exposed to the pipe band scene and build a stronger association.
Do you think our association should have more drum majors?
Well, I mean, we only have a few on this side of the country, and we don't hold a drum major competition.
Right.
I think it would be great to see that, because you see it happening over in the UK, and it's phenomenal. I think the more competition, the better. No matter if it's drum majors or not. We're trying to get off the ground tenor bass competitions here.
Yes.
So we're hoping that will start this season. Like I said, we don't run the games, so we can't tell them you have to put this in your in your games, but we're strongly encouraging them to do so. So we're hoping to see that within the next couple of years. And if that gets off the ground and it gets more tenor and bass players playing solos, and then preparing themselves to potentially have a chance to play in Maxville as a soloist, it would be fantastic. And I mean, the more things we can get in, the better, in my opinion.
Right. I know that in Ontario there is a shortage of drum majors with member bands in the PBBSO.
Hmm.
Would you say you're having that kind of an issue in the ACPBA?
Um, I wouldn't say it's an issue. I know there's a few bands that have drum majors. Um, Ultimately, I think it's a band thing. Most bands, like I know the college has a drum major, the College of Piping in Summerside. Um, Fredericton has one now, um, and when I was with Dartmouth, I did for a couple years. Act as a drum major. But I mean, aside from the military bands that we have around here, Nova Scotia Highlanders is one of the main ones, and they have a full pipe band as well. There's not a lot of drum majors. Um, we see them on parade with mass bands. There's not a lot of individuals that I can think of. I think there's only one individual that comes out as a drum major with no association to a band,
Right.
and he's usually only at one games in Fredericton. So to have an avenue for somebody to compete as a drum major as an individual, not necessarily associated with a band, would be a cool thing to have as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, that's one thing we have a bit of a problem with. I mean, right now, as far as drum majors in Ontario, I'm basically the only drum major that's it with a member band.
Okay.
Where what's happened? Well, actually, there's actually two others. Sorry, I miscounted. Well, four. There's four bands. One in Ottawa. Um, Actually, two in Ottawa. I gotta learn to count sometime here. Okay, two in Ottawa, one in Niagara, uh, I'm in Guelph, and
Mhm.
then one in Durham. So we're all
Right,
spread apart. And then what
right,
tends to
right.
happen is they don't have as many drum majors coming out. What the association does is they turn to some military drum majors. So I've
Right,
had to work
right,
with three military drum majors, and yeah,
right, right.
it's been a great experience. You know,
Mhm,
there's a lot to learn from these guys.
mhm.
There's a lot to learn. So that's sort of the experience we have. Yeah, but the challenge here is it's spread far apart, and
Mhm.
you don't know who's going to show up and when. There's a lot of organization that obviously takes place, especially when you're dealing with 9 individual events like they
Yeah,
do in Ontario.
yeah, and here mostly the drum majors that are with bands are players as well. So I mean, they'll hop in
Right.
and play. You'll do your parade or opening mass bands, and then you'll hop in and do your competition throughout the day. So um, I'm not sure how many people would want to do adding if they're not already, maybe if you're competing solo and a band and you want to try and do your drum major on top of that, it could be a bit much, but I'm sure it's been done by other people. But yeah, a lot of here, like I said, a lot of the drum majors that are with bands are players in those bands as well,
Right.
and just happen to pick up the mace and lead the band on a parade here and there. So yeah.
As long as I mean, it's all depends on how cool the band is about it too, right? Because
Yeah,
that's
exactly. I mean, with Dartmouth, it was more so a teaching thing. We wanted to try and um, have integrate our grade 5 and 4 and 3 band or whatever together, and to be able to put on parade as a bigger band. And
of
it
course.
just came out of necessity of teaching drill. So who knows
Yes.
how to do pipe band drill? Well, I have experience. I've been around military bands and whatnot, so I think I could lead a
Yeah.
drill class, which then just kind of
Yeah, you
morphed
kind
into
of
me
need
being a
it
drum
if
major.
yeah, you kind of need it if the band is huge. If I
Hmm.
mean, for my band, Guelph Pipe Band, we have a grade 3 and a grade 4, and when they're together, they are huge, and
Hmm.
without and so that's as their drum major, I mean, my role is sort of making sure that that they're checking their marching, checking how they do their drill.
Right.
I'm going to be working with them on their marching, along with the Spirit of Ontario. I'm going to be helping out mostly with a lot of the especially getting the kids into it. I mean, teaching them to go into the circle and just see how it transitions from
Right.
the ranks into the
Yes.
circle. You want to make sure that that there is some sort of a timing to it.
Yeah, for
So
sure. I mean, like for me, having experience as a drum major leading bands, um, I always like seeing, say, a parade, seeing a pipe band with a drum major. It just looks more complete. It looks more official. I mean, the music
yes,
is great.
they
But
look
it just
complete.
gives you that image, you know. Um, I do miss doing that, uh, and you know, seeing the bands from over at Worlds, and when they're all on the field, mass bands, seeing those drum majors lined up across the front of mass bands
Oh
is
yeah,
quite a sight to see. Very very impressive. Um, and yeah, it's something that I think Canadian wise, there's just not the only time you see a lot of drum majors is when you go to Maxville, you know, for mass
yes,
bands, and
yes.
then there's maybe 7 or 8, or maybe 10. Uh, but yeah, it's not something you see. It's not a very big part of the Canadian pipe band scene for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I understand that completely. So I got no more questions. I'm all out. um, Dan, thank you so much for appearing on the show. I mean, it's always nice to talk with a fellow former Sea Cadet and a fellow drum major.
Yeah, well, Renee, thanks for reaching out and inviting me on. It was great to be a part of the show, and um, I think it's fantastic that you've started doing this. And from a Canadian perspective, it's great to have, you know, more pipe band content out there. So my appreciation goes to you in that regard. So yeah, again, thanks for inviting me, and thanks for having me for sure.
Thank you so much, Dan. Uh,
My pleasure.
we'll stay in touch for sure.
For sure, definitely.
And that was ACPBA President Dan Nee. And when I come back, I will have my final thoughts. I just want to give a quick thank you again to Dan for coming on the show. As I said, we will stay in touch, and I'm sure we'll have a lot to talk about over the summer as we follow the Atlantic Canada tour. But sorry, folks, Mr. Doom and Gloom is back. And I wish I didn't have to do this, but being in the profession that I am, my day job is to identify problems and find solutions. So, as you know, we have only 5 grade 1 bands in North America, and of these 5, only 3 will be going to Scotland this summer. And because of that, there are questions that need to be answered. What will be the impact on the 78th Highlanders Halifax and the city of Dunedin not going to the games? How will the RSPBA take this? And probably another question is, what is the pressure on these bands needing to go to Scotland? Otherwise, they could be downgraded as a result of not going to the Worlds at all. That's the crux of it, isn't it? The RSPBA will make a decision on what a grade band does simply because they are completely in charge of the whole process of grading these bands and how they play at the Worlds. I can't help but think there could be repercussions as the result of these two bands not going to play in Scotland. And before we know it, there will only be 3 Grade 1 bands in North America next year. I can't help but be concerned here. But at the same time, I can understand the need to stay home once in a while. I can understand that we don't always want to go to Scotland just simply to keep your rating and perhaps risk a downgrade from how you play during the prelims. But when you're the only game in town, you never know how everyone else around you is doing. You never know how much better you are than the other band because they're basically on the other side of the country. Opportunities to sharp up and get ready for the big event are few and far between, simply because your geography does not fit. Having so many miles in between bands creates travel expenses and may not be enough for any band to travel thousands of miles to an event that they do not get enough money back to do the event at all. I mean, let's face it, travel is expensive. Accommodations are expensive. Going from one side of the country to the other is expensive. And organizers may not be able to fully reimburse you for the trouble of being invited to an event to end up having to pay for everything. I can only hope that I'm wrong. There is nothing I would love better than to be proven wrong about this. I want to know that my concerns are unfounded. I want to know that we will still have at least 5 Grade 1 bands in North America. But we've seen how the RSPBA handles bands that don't make the cut. Peel Regional Police is a case in point. The Grade 1 band was downgraded to a Grade 2 because they didn't make the cut. They took that downgrade in stride and have since been working on earning the right to be upgraded to a Grade 1 band. They have been PBBSO champion supreme in the Grade 2 level every year since then, but they still haven't upgraded to Grade 1. They are waiting for the RSPBA to tell them that they are now a Grade 1 band. But after a disappointing finish in the 2022 Worlds, that's not going to happen for another year. So all we can do at this point is hope for the best. We can only hope that no other bands will be downgraded because neither of them went to Scotland. But we then need to ask ourselves if going to Scotland is an obligation for every Grade 1 band in the world, and if that's the consequences of not going out there to play for the World Championships. Oh, it'll be a fly in the wall when the RSPBA meets after the Worlds. Like I said, I don't want to be Mr. Doom and Gloom. I just see a problem that needs to be solved before things get worse. And the last thing that RSPBA needs is more controversy after failing to hold the British Championships. If you enjoy this show, please like it and subscribe to my channel. Watch for the results show this week, as I will have the results from the Victoria Pipe Band Championships and the Dunedin Highland Games. I'm Rene Gauthier. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.